Based on 30 years of experience in the outdoors, this is everything I think you need to know to choose the right type of stove for your wild camping trips. This video explores some of the different types of stoves and pros and cons of each. This is focused on wild camping or trekking, so these are all stove types you may consider suitable for that, so light enough to carry and suitable for multi-day trips into the hills or woods. First consideration is fuel type. Most stoves fall into the fuel categories of gas, liquid fuels or solid fuel, and I'll take a look at a few options in each fuel category, starting with probably the most popular, gas. Gas stoves are most commonly powered by screw-fit canisters which contain a propane-butane mix and are the most popular type of stove. Depending on the gas mix, these have a number of advantages. They'll work down well to moderate sub-zero degrees, are efficient, easy to use, safe, and probably where you would start if buying your first stove. They also have a fast boil time, typically around 4 minutes per litre. You may see some stoves designed for the hairspray style butane bottles or the puncture top bluey style bottles, but I wouldn't bother with either of those as a trekking stove. One disadvantage of screw-in gas stoves is fuel price. Screw-top gas canisters are not that cheap, and it's a good idea to use a refill gadget if you want to use small bottles frequently, as you get far more gas for your money. I have a video here on safe refilling if you choose to take that route. A second disadvantage is fuel availability. You won't generally have a problem in Europe or America, but if you're going somewhere more far-flung or truly remote, you may struggle to find fresh canisters. If you're planning a long trip, you can use a calculator such as the one listed in the description to work out how many canisters you will need. So on to the different gas stove types. Canister toppers, remote canister stoves and system stoves. Canister toppers are typically the cheapest and lightest option and a great choice for a first stove. Very compact, they can usually be stored in the pan with the bottle, reliable and easy to use. The biggest downside is probably stability. You can get clip-on bottle feet to help with that. Typically with a small burner head, which means very localised heat, they're also not great for frying. Next up, remote canister stoves. Whilst they can still be pretty compact, they're typically bigger and bulkier than most canister toppers. However, they are much more stable and definitely more suitable for bigger cooking tasks or larger pots, working well for cooking methods like frying, featuring bigger burner heads and finer gas flow control. Whilst the canister topper is typically a better choice for fast and light solo trips, cooking for one, the remote canister would be my choice for longer trips, cooking for multiple people or with something like canoe travel. Again, little to go wrong and available pretty cheap to buy. The braided hose is probably the weak point for reliability, so check for leaks if yours has been stored for a long time. Which brings me to one of the most popular stove types on the market, the system stove. These were pioneered by Jetboil in the early noughties and had a massive impact on the camping world. The key advantage of these is efficiency. They have a heat exchanger, basically a ruffle of folded aluminium, so less heat is lost around the sides, as well as a neoprene sleeve on the pot, so use about 30% less gas than a standard gas stove. So that's about 12 grams per litre to boil, which can save you weight under the right circumstances. I have a video on that if you want to save yourself doing some maths. They're also capable of being used with a hanging system, so you can cook somewhere like a portaledge on the side of a cliff face without a solid floor to cook on. They are also a canister top stove, but as the pan and burner are one unit, they are a lot more stable, i.e. the pots can't fall off the stove. Again, canister feet are available to clip into the canister to improve stability, as for other stove toppers. The form factor is great. This version of is the OEX Hero, which is fast becoming a bit of a bargain classic. Everything is self-contained, you can pack a small gas bottle in the pot with the burner, and they're super simple to use. A great choice all round. But what about the disadvantages? Well, there are two main ones. Firstly, they are heavier than a normal stove topper, even allowing for the built-in pot. Despite 30% better fuel efficiency, for short trips where you might only boil 5 or 6 litres of water, then they add weight, not remove it. Another disadvantage, these stoves are designed with the integrated pot. Although some models offer some alternatives, generally it's the case of what you see is what you get, i.e. if you want to boil 400 millilitres of water for a dehydrated meal or a coffee, perfect. Everything else not so much. And another disadvantage is of course the cost. These are an expensive option versus a standard stove topper, but if convenience and efficient water boiling are a priority, you won't go too far wrong. Moving on from gas stoves, the next most popular option are liquid fuel stoves. First up are the spirit or alcohol burners. Probably the most legendary of these is the classic Trangia. These are a perennial favourite of youth groups such as the Duke of Edinburgh for good reason. Relatively safe, foolproof and effective they do though have a few disadvantages. Fuel efficiency is lower than for gas stoves at around 35 grams, so over an ounce of fuel required per litre of water boiled. That's at least double the fuel weight per litre. They're also slow. Lighting and cooking on a meths burner is not an instant affair. You can expect a 10-minute boil time per litre of water. You've also got to be pretty careful with fuel storage. Many DFE trip or scout hike ends in meths tainted kit or food from a leaky bottle. But what they lack in efficiency they make up for in reliability. With literally nothing to go wrong, rubber O-rings to perish or lines to clog, they can pretty much last for life. Also worth pointing out is that an alcohol burner is one type of stove you can make yourself. A Coke can stove, other cans work equally well. It's a super lightweight and satisfying budget option, albeit not something I would want to chuck in the bag with fuel in it. Next up is the other type of liquid fuel stove most commonly used, the pressurized white gas or petrol stove. These are really the expedition stove of choice if you're heading remote or away from it all. Probably the most famous makers of these for expeditions and trekking are MSR and Primus. They're typically run on specialist white gas for the cleanest burn, but normal petrol works fine, and with a quick change of the fuel jet, even diesel, paraffin, kerosene will work, albeit are smokier options. But if you want a powerful stove you can run for hours in all temperatures and find fuel for anywhere, these are the go-to. These stoves are slightly less efficient than gas at around 23 grams of fuel per litre boiled, but they do boil the fastest once going. However, once you factor in the time to prime the stove, essentially heat it up with some fuel to get the fuel vaporising effectively, it is slower than gas for one-off boils. They also aren't the lightest stove type, so not the choice for fast and light trips. Another advantage of pressurised liquid fuel stoves is field maintainability. If you pack the appropriate spares kit, you can provide a full service from the Mongolian steppes to the Greenland ice cap. But would I recommend these as a first stove for wild camping? Probably not. These are the most expensive, most powerful and are super versatile, but not the easiest or lightest to use. This particular stove is my MSR Whisperlight International. It's now 20 years old, but still going strong with the occasional service. O-rings are the most common failure points, but easy to replace, so worth carrying some spares. So that brings us to our last fuel type, solid fuels. Now there are a few options here, including hexamine tablets, the old army favourite, but generally I think these are not worth the bother unless for very specific purposes. Ultra lightweight single nighters, military use or super low budget trips. But what I do enjoy using occasionally is a wood gas style stove. This is a budget wood gas stove from Lixada, available from online retailers. These basically burn on any flammable solids you feed it, mainly twigs with some dry grass or bark to help get started. Toilet paper or cotton wool work even better as a fire starter. They are of course slow to get started, but double as a very mini fire pit to add a nice ambience for a woodland wild camp where you're not in a hurry. Of course it goes without saying that these are real fire risks, so you need to exercise caution, and I would not choose this style of stove for warm weather camping in wood or grassland areas. Land access issues are a big enough issue without burning down tracts of woodland. The big advantage of these is of course free fuel. A handful of dry twigs can be enough to boil some water. The disadvantage being that for this reason, unless you're camping in wooded areas or somewhere like a beach with available driftwood, you can find yourself without fuel. And even then, if it's wet, you can have a bit of a trouble lighting them. So really I consider these as a fun option for the right kind of trip, but not something I would rely on in the mountains or when I had an absolute reliance on the need to boil water or melt snow. So in summary, these are the kinds of circumstances I would choose each stove type for. If you are starting out wild camping or on a limited budget though, I would stick with a basic gas stove, either a canister topper if you're focused on basic water boiling for one, or a simple remote canister stove if wanting to do more sophisticated cooking or cooking for more than one. I hope you found it useful, but I would love to hear if you have any recommendations yourself or think I missed anything, so do leave a comment and do remember to like or subscribe if you found this kind of gear guide useful.